The black sedan pulled into Buckingham Palace at exactly 3:47 a.m., its tinted windows hiding the passenger inside. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell stepped out, her trained eyes scanning the shadows that most people never noticed. What she saw would change everything she thought she knew about royal protection. Sarah had been called to investigate a security breach that could have ended in disaster. Someone had managed to get within 50 feet of the Queen's private quarters, carrying what appeared to be a weapon. The official report would later say it was a false alarm, but Sarah knew better. She had seen the fear in the senior protection officer's eyes when he briefed her. The world sees the glamorous side of royal life through carefully staged photographs and public appearances. What they don't see is the invisible army of highly trained professionals who work around the clock to keep the royal family safe. These men and women operate in the shadows, their names never appearing in newspapers, their faces never shown on television. Sarah's investigation began in the Queen's private wing, where she met Commander James Harrison, the head of Royal Protection. Harrison had been guarding royalty for over 20 years, and his weathered face told stories of countless sleepless nights and split-second decisions that could mean the difference between life and death. Most people think royal security is about standing around looking impressive in uniform. Harrison explained as they walked through corridors that tourists would never see. The reality is far different. We're dealing with everything from international terrorists to mentally unstable individuals who believe they have a personal relationship with members of the royal family. The security measures begin long before any royal steps outside. Every public appearance requires weeks of planning, with teams of specialists examining every possible threat. They study the route, the venue, the guest list, and even the weather conditions. Nothing is left to chance. Sarah learned that protection officers undergo training that would challenge military special forces. They study everything from advanced driving techniques to medical procedures, from crowd psychology to international law. They must be prepared to make life or death decisions in milliseconds, often while protecting someone who may not even realize they're in danger. The Queen's daily routine involves layers of security that most people never suspect. When she has breakfast, someone has already tested her food. When she reads her morning papers, someone has screened them for potential threats. When she walks her dogs in the palace gardens, snipers are positioned on nearby rooftops. But the most challenging aspect of royal protection isn't dealing with obvious threats. It's managing the delicate balance between security and allowing the royals to maintain some semblance of a normal life. Princess Anne, known for her no-nonsense attitude, once fired a protection officer for being too obvious about his presence during a charity event. The technology used in royal protection reads like something from a spy novel. Hidden cameras monitor every corner of royal residences, while sophisticated alarm systems can detect the slightest disturbance. Communication devices allow protection officers to coordinate instantly, using coded language that sounds innocent to outsiders. Sarah discovered that one of the most difficult challenges is protecting royal children. Young princes and princesses want to play, explore, and have friends like any other children, but their protection officers must constantly balance normal childhood activities with security requirements that would seem paranoid. To most parents, the security team includes specialists from various fields. There are medical experts who can perform emergency surgery, technology specialists who can detect electronic surveillance, and behavioral analysts who can spot potential threats in a crowd of thousands. Each brings unique skills to the collective mission of keeping the royal family safe. Vehicle security alone involves an entire department. Royal cars are modified with bulletproof glass, reinforced bodies, and emergency communication systems. But perhaps more importantly, the routes are constantly varied and monitored. Decoy vehicles often travel different paths to confuse potential attackers. Intelligence gathering is a crucial but rarely discussed aspect of royal protection. Officers work closely with domestic and international intelligence agencies to identify potential threats before they materialize. This involves monitoring everything from social media posts to international terrorist communications. the psychological pressure on protection officers is enormous. They must remain constantly alert, ready to put their own lives at risk for people they're sworn to protect. Many struggle with the weight of responsibility, knowing that a single moment of inattention could have catastrophic consequences. Sarah's investigation revealed that the earlier security breach had been more serious than initially reported. An individual with a history of mental illness and an obsession with the royal family had managed to evade multiple security layers before being stopped just yards from the Queen's private apartments. The incident highlighted both the strengths and weaknesses of the current security system. While the intruder had been ultimately stopped before causing harm, his ability to penetrate so deeply into the palace raised serious questions about existing protocols. Training scenarios are conducted regularly, with protection officers facing increasingly complex and realistic threat situations. These exercises often involve cooperation with other emergency services, testing not just individual skills but the ability of different agencies to work together under pressure. The cost of royal protection runs into millions of pounds annually, but officials consider it a necessary investment. The royal family represents not just individuals but symbols of national identity and stability. Any successful attack would have implications far beyond the immediate victims. Female protection officers face unique challenges in this traditionally male-dominated field. They must prove themselves capable of handling the same physical demands while often dealing with additional scrutiny about their suitability for the role. As Sarah continued her investigation, she began to understand that royal security is as much about perception as reality. The visible security measures serve as deterrents, while the invisible ones provide the real protection. The art lies in maintaining both without making the royals feel like prisoners in their own homes. The night shift brought different challenges, with skeleton crews maintaining vigilance while most of the palace slept. These officers often develop an intimate knowledge of royal habits and preferences, becoming trusted confidants who must maintain absolute discretion about everything they observe. Sarah realized that the men and women who protect the royal family sacrifice their own privacy and often their family lives for the job. They work holidays, miss important personal events, and live with constant stress, all while maintaining a professional demeanor that never reveals the true nature of their responsibilities. The alarm system at Windsor Castle detected movement in the East Wing at 2:15 a.m. on a Tuesday in November. Within seconds, armed response teams were moving through darkened corridors, their night vision equipment turning the familiar passages into an alien landscape of green shadows and potential threats. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell accompanied the team, her investigation into royal security taking an unexpected turn. What they found would expose the most sophisticated surveillance operation ever conducted against the British royal family. The intruder had vanished, but evidence of their presence remained. Microscopic listening devices, so small they could be mistaken for dust particles, had been planted in 3 separate rooms. The technology was so advanced that initial sweeps hadn't detected them. Commander Harrison's face was grim as he examined the devices under a magnifying glass. "This isn't the work of an amateur," he told Sarah. "Someone with serious resources and professional training has been watching us, learning our patterns, studying our weaknesses." The discovery triggered the most comprehensive security review in royal protection history. Every room in every royal residence would be examined with equipment sensitive enough to detect electronics smaller than a pinhead. The process would take weeks and reveal uncomfortable truths about how vulnerable the royal family had become. Royal protection officers trained for scenarios that most people couldn't imagine. They practiced defending against chemical attacks, coordinating evacuations during natural disasters, and maintaining security during international crises. But the hardest part isn't the dramatic emergencies. It's the daily grind of staying alert when nothing seems to be happening. Officer Rebecca Turner had been protecting Princess Charlotte for 3 years, and she knew the 7-year-old's routines better than most family members. Every morning, Charlotte would peek around her bedroom door to see if Becca was there. The simple gesture reminded Rebecca why the long hours and constant vigilance mattered. Children in the royal family present unique protection challenges. They attend school with other children, participate in sports, and have playdates, all normal activities that require extraordinary security planning. Protection officers must remain invisible while ensuring every interaction is safe. The technology used to monitor royal communications would amaze most people. Every phone call, email, and text message is screened for potential threats. Sophisticated. Software analyzes language patterns to identify messages that might indicate hostile intentions. The system processes thousands of communications daily, flagging anything unusual for human review. Sarah learned that one of the most dangerous threats comes from individuals who believe they have personal relationships with royal family members. These people, often suffering from mental illness, can become fixated on particular royals and convinced that their feelings are reciprocated. The case files revealed disturbing stories of obsessive behavior. One woman had sent over 3,000 letters to Prince William, each more intimate and concerning than the last. Another man had attempted to scale the palace walls 17 times, each attempt becoming more sophisticated and dangerous. International travel requires the most complex security arrangements. When a royal visits another country, advanced teams spend months coordinating with local authorities. Every hotel room is swept for surveillance devices. Every meal is prepared under strict supervision, and every public appearance involves cooperation between British and local security forces. The Queen's recent visit to Ireland had required unprecedented cooperation between British and Irish authorities. Old political tensions made the security arrangements especially sensitive, with both sides working to ensure the visit proceeded without incident while managing the complex history between the two nations. Protection officers often find themselves in situations that require split-second decisions with international implications. During a royal visit to a Middle Eastern country, an officer noticed a slight bulge in a photographer's jacket that could have been a weapon. His decision to intervene potentially prevented an assassination attempt, though the incident was never reported in the media. Vehicle convoys represent one of the most vulnerable moments in royal security. Despite bulletproof cars and carefully planned routes, the vehicles must travel on public roads where attacks could come from multiple directions. The 1997 death of Princess Diana in Paris remains a stark reminder of how quickly situations can turn deadly. Modern royal vehicles contain technology that seems like science fiction. Hidden compartments store emergency medical supplies and communications equipment. The cars can maintain contact with security headquarters even in areas with no cell phone coverage. Some vehicles can even drive themselves to predetermined safe locations if the driver becomes incapacitated. The investigation revealed that the listening devices had been placed during a charity reception 3 weeks earlier. Someone among the carefully vetted guests had managed to plant the surveillance equipment while maintaining their cover as a legitimate attendee. Security cameras captured every moment of the reception, but identifying the culprit required analyzing thousands of hours of footage. The suspect would be someone who had access to restricted areas while appearing to behave normally throughout the evening. Cybersecurity represents the newest frontier in royal protection. Hackers regularly attempt to breach royal communication systems, seeking everything from embarrassing personal information to details about security procedures. The royal families digital footprint must be constantly monitored and protected. Princess Catherine's phone had been targeted by sophisticated malware designed to activate its camera and microphone remotely. The attack was discovered during routine security screening, but it raised troubling questions about how much other surveillance might have gone undetected. The human cost of royal protection extends beyond the immediate family. Protection officers' families live with constant uncertainty about their loved ones' safety. Children of protection officers often don't fully understand why their parent can't discuss work or why they sometimes disappear for days without explanation. Officer David Thompson had missed his daughter's wedding because he was accompanying Prince Charles on an overseas trip. The sacrifice was typical for protection officers, who must choose between family obligations and royal duties. Most choose duty, but the personal cost is enormous. Training new protection officers involves psychological evaluation as intensive as the physical requirements. Candidates must demonstrate not just the ability to handle weapons and martial arts, but the emotional stability to work under constant pressure while maintaining absolute discretion. The vetting process for royal protection can take over a year. Every aspect of a candidate's life is examined, from financial history to personal relationships. Family members and friends are interviewed to ensure there are no vulnerabilities that could be exploited by hostile forces. Medical emergencies present special challenges for royal protection. When Prince Philip was rushed to the hospital last year, security teams had to coordinate with medical staff while maintaining operational security. The hospital was essentially transformed into a temporary secure facility without disrupting patient care. Royal protection officers must be prepared to provide emergency medical care themselves. They receive training equivalent to paramedics, enabling them to stabilize patients until professional medical help arrives. In remote locations or during travel, they may be the only medical support available. The listening devices found at Windsor Castle were traced to a foreign intelligence service that had been planning the operation for over 2 years. The discovery led to a diplomatic crisis that was resolved quietly, away from media attention. But it highlighted how royal security had become a target for international espionage. Sarah's investigation was expanding beyond a simple security breach. She was uncovering evidence of a systematic campaign to gather intelligence about royal protection procedures, possibly in preparation for a more serious attack. The stakes were higher than anyone had initially realized. The encrypted message arrived at MI5 headquarters at 4:22 a.m., marked with the highest priority classification. Intelligence analysts working the night shift immediately recognized the significance. Someone was planning to target the royal family during the upcoming state dinner, and they had inside information about security procedures. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell was summoned from her hotel room to join an emergency briefing that would bring together representatives from multiple intelligence agencies. The investigation had evolved from a simple security breach into a potential national security crisis. The state dinner was scheduled for Thursday evening, just 4 days away. President Macron of France would be attending, along with senior government officials from both countries. Canceling the event would create a diplomatic incident, but proceeding with inadequate security could result in catastrophe. Commander Harrison spread architectural plans across the conference table, his finger tracing the routes that the royal family and their guests would take through Buckingham Palace. Every corridor, every doorway, every possible hiding place had to be reconsidered in light of the new threat. Royal protection officers had been drilling for weeks in preparation for the state dinner. The event would bring together high-value targets from 2 nations, making it an attractive opportunity for terrorists or foreign agents. Now they faced the additional challenge of defending against someone who knew their procedures. The investigation had identified 3 possible suspects among the staff who had access to Windsor Castle during the charity reception. Each had passed extensive background checks, but intelligence analysts were discovering connections that hadn't been apparent during initial vetting. Maria Santos worked in the palace kitchens and had been employed for 8 years. Her record was spotless, but investigators discovered that her sister had married a man with suspected ties to an international criminal organization. The connection was tenuous, but it couldn't be ignored. Thomas Wright managed telecommunications systems throughout royal properties. His technical knowledge would have made it easy to plant surveillance devices, and his security clearance gave him access to restricted areas. But his background check had revealed nothing suspicious. The third suspect, Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell, served as a physician for royal staff members. Her medical training would have provided knowledge about palace layouts and emergency procedures. She had also traveled extensively, including visits to countries with hostile intelligence services. Security sweeps intensified throughout all royal properties. Teams with electronic detection equipment examined every room, every piece of furniture, every decorative object that might conceal surveillance devices. The process was methodical but time-consuming, and they were working against an impossible deadline. The psychological pressure on protection officers was enormous. They were defending against an unknown threat while maintaining normal operations. Royal family members had to be protected without being made aware of the specific danger. As panic could compromise security measures, Princess Anne's typical schedule included 3 public engagements on Tuesday. Her protection team faced the difficult decision of whether to recommend cancellations without revealing the nature of the threat. Too much caution could disrupt important commitments, but insufficient precautions could prove deadly. Advanced surveillance technology was deployed throughout Buckingham Palace in preparation for the state dinner. Hidden cameras capable of facial recognition would monitor every guest, while sophisticated audio equipment would detect conversations in multiple languages. The system could identify potential threats in real time. The French security delegation arrived 2 days early to coordinate protective measures for their president. Their officers brought different procedures and equipment, requiring extensive collaboration to ensure the 2 security teams could work together effectively during the dinner. Cultural differences created unexpected challenges. French protection officers preferred more visible security presence, while British teams emphasized discretion. The compromise required careful choreography to maintain both nation standards without creating confusion during the event. Sarah's investigation took an unexpected turn when forensic analysis of the listening devices revealed they contained components manufactured in 3 different countries. The sophisticated supply chain suggested professional intelligence operatives rather than amateur criminals. International intelligence sharing provided crucial information about similar surveillance devices discovered in government facilities across Europe. The pattern suggested a coordinated espionage campaign targeting multiple Western nations, with the royal family serving as a particularly valuable intelligence source. The Queen's daily briefings now included security updates that she hadn't received since the height of the troubles in Northern Ireland. Her calm reaction impressed protection officers who had worried about how she would handle the heightened threat level. Training scenarios became more intense as the state dinner approached. Protection officers practiced coordinated responses to multiple simultaneous threats, including scenarios where guests might be compromised or turned against their hosts. The exercises revealed gaps in procedures that required immediate attention. Medical preparations for the state dinner involved positioning emergency response teams at strategic locations throughout the palace. Ambulances would be stationed nearby, and trauma surgeons would be on standby. The medical team had to prepare for everything from heart attacks to poisoning to gunshot wounds. The catering operation faced unprecedented scrutiny. Every ingredient would be tracked from source to plate, and multiple taste testers would sample each dish. The kitchen staff would be screened again just hours before the event, and their movements would be monitored throughout food preparation. Communication. Security required establishing encrypted channels between British and French protection teams. The systems had to be sophisticated enough to prevent interception while remaining simple enough for officers to use effectively during high-stress situations. Weather conditions could affect security arrangements significantly. Rain would require covered walkways and might limit the effectiveness of some surveillance equipment. Wind could carry sounds that might mask approaching threats or interfere with radio communications. The investigation revealed that someone had been photographing palace staff during their off-duty hours. The surveillance extended beyond work locations to include homes, favorite restaurants, and family gatherings. The scope suggested preparation for a major operation. Liaison officers from Scotland Yard's counter-terrorism unit joined the investigation, bringing expertise in tracking international criminal networks. Their involvement indicated that authorities now considered the threat to be more than simple espionage. Protocol specialists worked to modify state dinner procedures without making changes obvious to guests or media. Security requirements had to be balanced against diplomatic necessity and ceremonial tradition. Even small alterations could be noticed by experienced observers. The palace's ancient architecture created both advantages and challenges for security teams. Thick walls and limited access points made some areas easier to defend, but hidden passages and service corridors provided potential. Infiltration routes that required constant monitoring. Background checks were expanded to include extended family members and business associates of all staff who would be present during the state dinner. The process revealed connections that hadn't been apparent during routine screening, including financial relationships that could be used to compromise individuals. Sarah discovered that the surveillance operation had been even more extensive than initially suspected. Hidden cameras had been placed in staff areas, and computer systems had been infiltrated to gather information about security procedures and royal schedules. The breakthrough came when technical analysis revealed that one of the listening devices contained a unique identifier that matched equipment seized during a raid in Belgium 6 months earlier. The connection provided the first concrete link to a known terrorist organization. Emergency protocols were activated throughout the Royal Protection Service. Additional officers were recalled from leave, and backup teams were positioned at alternate locations. The state dinner would proceed, but it would be defended with the most intensive security operation in modern British history. The secure conference room beneath Whitehall filled with representatives from every major intelligence agency in Britain. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell found herself seated next to operatives whose names she would never learn. Discussing threats that officially didn't exist, the briefing screens displayed intercepts from communications intelligence that painted a disturbing picture. The surveillance operation targeting the royal family was connected to a larger network planning multiple coordinated attacks across Europe. The state dinner had become just one piece of a much more complex puzzle. Maria Santos, the kitchen worker, had disappeared during the night. Her supervisor discovered her absence when she failed to report for the early morning shift, and a search of her apartment revealed that she had left hastily, taking only essential items. The disappearance confirmed suspicions that she was involved in the intelligence operation. Commander Harrison coordinated the manhunt from a command center that had been established in the palace basement. Multiple agencies were tracking Santos through CCTV networks, bank records, and mobile phone signals. Every airport, train station, and port was being monitored for signs of her escape attempt. The investigation revealed that Santos had been recruited 3 years earlier during a family visit to Spain. Her sister's husband had gambling debts to criminal organizations with ties to international terrorism. The recruitment had been patient and subtle, with Santos gradually providing information about palace routines and security procedures. French intelligence services confirmed that President Macron had received similar threats during previous state visits. The pattern suggested that the terrorist network specifically targeted high-profile diplomatic events where multiple leaders would be present in one location. The symbolism of such an attack would amplify its impact far beyond the immediate casualties. Royal protection officers implemented emergency protocols that transformed Buckingham Palace into a fortress. Additional checkpoints were established throughout the building, and every staff member was required to submit to enhanced security screening. The measures were disruptive, but necessary given the credible threat. The Queen's reaction to the security briefing surprised even veteran protection officers. Rather than expressing concern about the threats, she focused on ensuring that the state dinner would proceed as planned. Her determination to maintain normal diplomatic functions demonstrated the courage that had defined her reign. Technology specialists discovered that the surveillance network had been more sophisticated than initially realized. Malicious software had been installed in palace computer systems, allowing remote monitoring of communications and security camera feeds. The infiltration had provided real-time intelligence about protection procedures. Princess Catherine's protection detail was quietly reinforced after. Intelligence suggested she had been specifically mentioned in intercepted communications. The threat assessment indicated that targeting younger royals might create greater emotional impact while potentially facing lighter security measures. The state dinner's guest list required complete re-evaluation. Background checks were expanded for every attendee, including diplomatic staff who had previously been considered beyond suspicion. The process revealed concerning connections that had been overlooked during routine screening. Bomb disposal experts conducted systematic sweeps of the entire palace complex. Their equipment could detect explosive materials in microscopic quantities, and they examined everything from flower arrangements to heating systems. The process was methodical but essential given the nature of the threats. International cooperation reached unprecedented levels as intelligence agencies shared information that was normally classified beyond any standard sharing agreement. The threat to the royal family had become a test case for counterterrorism coordination between allied nations. The missing kitchen worker's mobile phone provided crucial intelligence when it was triangulated to a location near Heathrow Airport. Armed police units were dispatched to intercept Santos before she could board a flight to Madrid, where intelligence suggested she would be extracted by the terrorist. Cybersecurity teams worked around the clock to remove malicious software from palace systems while preserving evidence for the investigation. The challenge was eliminating the security breach without alerting the attackers that their surveillance had been discovered. Training exercises for state dinner security took on new urgency as protection officers rehearsed responses to multiple simultaneous threats. The scenarios included coordinated attacks from inside and outside the palace, with some exercises involving fake guests who revealed hostile intentions during the dinner service. Medical preparations expanded to include specialists in treating chemical and biological weapon exposure. The threat assessment couldn't rule out attacks involving substances that would be difficult to detect until symptoms appeared. Emergency antidotes were positioned throughout the palace. The arrest of Maria Santos at Heathrow Airport provided a major breakthrough in the investigation. She was carrying encrypted communications equipment and detailed floor plans of Buckingham Palace that included security camera locations and guard patrol routes. Her cooperation would be essential for understanding the full scope of the threat. Interrogation revealed that Santos was part of a cell that had been planning the operation for over 2 years. The network included sympathizers in multiple European capitals, with the state dinner representing the culmination of their intelligence-gathering efforts. The attack was designed to maximize diplomatic and symbolic impact. President Macron's security team insisted on bringing additional protection officers despite diplomatic protocol concerns. The French president had survived 2 previous assassination attempts, and his team was unwilling to rely entirely on British security arrangements given the specific threats. The palace kitchen operation was completely restructured for the state dinner. All food would be prepared by a skeleton crew of officers who had been subjected to the most intensive security screening possible. Even familiar recipes were modified to ensure that any contamination attempts would be immediately detected. Communication protocols required every protection officer to check in with Central Command every 15 minutes during the event. The system would immediately detect if any officer was compromised or incapacitated, triggering emergency response procedures that had been rehearsed extensively. Sarah's investigation uncovered evidence that the terrorist network had been studying royal protection procedures for years through publicly available information. News reports, official photographs, and even tourist videos had been analyzed to understand security arrangements and identify potential vulnerabilities. The breakthrough interrogation of Santos revealed that the primary attack was planned for the moment when the Queen and President Macron would toast their nation's friendship. The symbolic gesture would be captured by photographers and broadcast internationally, making it an ideal target for maximum impact. Counter-surveillance teams discovered additional listening devices in locations that hadn't been checked during initial sweeps. The sophistication of the placement suggested that the terrorists had detailed knowledge of palace security procedures and had been able to access highly restricted areas. Repeatedly, emergency evacuation procedures were rehearsed with royal family members for the first time in decades. The routes and methods were kept secret even from most protection officers. with only senior commanders knowing the complete evacuation plan. The Queen participated fully in the exercises despite their disruptive nature. Intelligence analysts worked to understand the terrorist network's ultimate objectives. The state dinner attack appeared to be part of a larger strategy to destabilize European Union relationships and undermine confidence in international diplomatic cooperation. Backup security measures included positioning armed response teams at strategic locations throughout London. The units could reach Buckingham Palace within minutes if the primary security perimeter was breached. Their presence was coordinated with local police to avoid confusion during any emergency response. The psychological pressure on protection officers intensified as the state dinner approached. They were defending against a specific threat while maintaining the appearance of normal operations. Any visible increase in security measures could alert the terrorists that their surveillance had been discovered. Final security briefings revealed that intelligence services had identified other members of the terrorist cell operating in London. Surveillance teams were monitoring known associates of Santos while attempting to avoid actions that might compromise the investigation or alert remaining conspirators to the extent of police knowledge. The morning of the state dinner dawned gray and drizzly, conditions that would complicate security arrangements but might also work to their advantage. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell arrived at Buckingham Palace at dawn to find the building transformed into what resembled a military command center, disguised as a diplomatic venue. Surveillance teams had been tracking suspicious individuals throughout London since midnight. 3 men connected to the terrorist network had been observed conducting reconnaissance near the palace, though they maintained careful distance from the security perimeter. Armed police units shadowed them while remaining invisible to casual observers. Commander Harrison coordinated final preparations from a control room filled with monitors showing feeds from hundreds of security cameras. Every angle of the palace was visible in real time, with sophisticated software analyzing movement patterns and flagging anything unusual for human review. The French security delegation had arrived with equipment that impressed even veteran British protection officers. Their electronic surveillance systems could detect weapons through multiple layers of clothing, and their communications gear used quantum encryption that was theoretically impossible to intercept. Royal family members began their day with security briefings that were more detailed than usual but carefully crafted to inform without creating panic. The Queen listened to the threat assessment with characteristic composure, asking practical questions about how the evening's protocol might be affected. Kitchen operations commenced under unprecedented security supervision. Every ingredient was tested for contamination before preparation began, and multiple backup meals were prepared in separate locations. The complexity of ensuring food safety while maintaining the quality expected for a state dinner required extraordinary coordination. Intelligence intercepts during the morning revealed concerning communications between known terrorist operatives. Coded language suggested that the attack timeline had been moved forward, possibly to take advantage of some perceived vulnerability in security arrangements. The arrest of 2 additional suspects in a pre-dawn raid provided crucial intelligence about the terrorist network's structure. Computer equipment seized during the operation contained detailed plans for the attack, including escape routes and contingency procedures if the primary plan failed. French President Macron's arrival required coordination between multiple security agencies, while maintaining the ceremonial dignity appropriate for a state visit. His motorcade followed a route that had been changed 3 times during the morning, with decoy vehicles creating confusion for potential attackers. Protection officers conducted final sweeps of every room that would be used during the state dinner. Their equipment could detect explosive residue, surveillance devices, and even unusual chemical signatures that might indicate biological weapons. The process was thorough but time-consuming. The guest arrival process incorporated security measures that were invisible to diplomats and dignitaries but created multiple checkpoints where potential threats could be identified and neutralized. Even ambassadors who had attended similar events for decades were subjected to enhanced screening. Sarah's investigation had evolved to include coordination with international partners tracking the terrorist network across multiple countries. The organization appeared to have cells operating in France, Belgium, and Germany, all connected through encrypted communications and shared resources. Medical teams positioned throughout the palace included specialists who could respond to various attack scenarios. Trauma surgeons were standing by in a converted room near the state dining hall, while toxicology experts monitored for signs of chemical or biological contamination. The Queen's preparation for the evening included security considerations that had never been necessary during previous state dinners. Her jewelry was examined for tracking devices. Her clothing was screened for hidden surveillance equipment, and even her handbag contents were verified. Communication systems linking all security teams operated on frequencies that were changed hourly to prevent interception. The networks included not just voice communications, but data links that could transmit real-time threat assessments and coordinate responses to multiple simultaneous incidents. Weather conditions deteriorated during the afternoon, with heavy rain creating visibility problems for external surveillance teams. The precipitation also affected electronic equipment and could mask the sounds of approaching threats or emergency vehicles. Intelligence analysts discovered that the terrorist network had been studying the personal habits of royal family members for months. Social media posts, public appearances, and even casual photographs had been analyzed to identify patterns that could be exploited during an attack. The palace transformation for the state dinner occurred under the watchful eyes of protection officers who had to balance security requirements with diplomatic necessity. Every flower arrangement was inspected, every piece of equipment was verified, and every staff member was confirmed through multiple identification checks. Counterintelligence operations revealed that the terrorists had attempted to recruit additional palace staff members during recent weeks. The recruitment efforts had been sophisticated, using personal financial pressures and family connections to identify potential vulnerabilities. Emergency response procedures were tested one final time during the afternoon. Evacuation routes were verified, communication systems were confirmed operational, and backup security teams confirmed their readiness to respond within seconds of any alarm. The investigation uncovered evidence that similar attacks had been planned against other European royal families during the same time period. The coordinated nature of the threats suggested a well-funded and professionally organized terrorist network with capabilities that exceeded initial assessments. Final intelligence briefings revealed that the terrorists possessed inside information about palace security procedures that could only have come from someone with authorized access. The betrayal implied that additional security breaches remained undiscovered despite intensive investigation efforts. Protection officers received last-minute updates about specific individuals who would be attending the dinner. Background checks had revealed concerning connections for several guests, requiring enhanced monitoring during their presence in the palace. The Queen's final security briefing took place in her private study, where she reviewed contingency procedures while maintaining the calm demeanor that had characterized her response to the crisis. Her willingness to proceed with the dinner despite genuine threats demonstrated remarkable courage. Surveillance teams reported unusual activity near the palace during late afternoon. Vehicles had been observed conducting reconnaissance, and individuals with sophisticated photography equipment had been monitoring security arrangements from legal vantage points. The terrorist cell's communications were being monitored in real time, providing intelligence about their intentions and timing. However, the intercepts also revealed that the terrorists suspected their surveillance had been compromised, potentially prompting changes to their attack plans. Advanced screening technology was deployed at every entrance to the palace. The equipment could detect weapons, explosives, and surveillance devices while appearing to be routine diplomatic security measures. Guests would be unaware of the intensive screening they were undergoing. International media attention focused on the state dinner created additional security challenges. News crews and photographers had to be positioned where they could capture the ceremonial aspects while remaining outside security perimeters that might be targeted by terrorists. Final preparations included positioning specialized response teams at strategic locations throughout London. These units could provide immediate backup if the palace security perimeter was breached, and they were equipped to handle various attack scenarios, including chemical weapons and coordinated assaults. The evening approached with security measures at maximum alert level. Every protection officer understood that they were defending against a specific, credible threat while maintaining the diplomatic dignity that such events required. The balance between security and ceremony had never been more critical or more challenging to achieve. The state dining room glittered under crystal chandeliers as the final guests took their places, unaware that dozens of armed protection officers were positioned throughout the palace, ready to respond to threats that intelligence services had been tracking for weeks. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell watched from the security control room as cameras captured every angle of what could become either a diplomatic triumph or a national tragedy. Commander Harrison received the final confirmation at 7:47 p.m. All guests had been screened, all security positions were occupied, and counter-surveillance teams had verified that no immediate threats were visible outside the palace perimeter. Yet the intelligence intercepts suggested the attack would come during the traditional toast between the Queen and President Macron. The dinner conversation flowed smoothly between the royal family and their French guests, with no indication of the tension that gripped the protection officers monitoring every movement. Hidden cameras tracked each guest's hands, while sophisticated audio equipment analyzed conversations for coded language that might signal hostile intentions. At 8:23 p.m., surveillance teams outside the palace reported movement that didn't match normal pedestrian patterns. 3 individuals were approaching the palace from different directions, their coordination suggesting they were part of an organized operation. Armed response units moved to intercept while maintaining positions that wouldn't be visible from the dining room. The Queen rose for the traditional toast at exactly 8:35 p.m., as protocol demanded. President Macron stood beside her, both leaders unaware that protection officers throughout the palace had weapons drawn and were prepared to respond within seconds to any threat. The moment represented the culmination of weeks of intelligence gathering and preparation. Sarah watched the surveillance feeds intensely as the 2 leaders raised their glasses. The terrorist communications had indicated this would be the moment of attack, when cameras would capture the symbolic gesture for international broadcast. The timing would maximize both the psychological impact and media coverage of any successful assault. The first indication of trouble came from thermal imaging equipment that detected unusual heat signatures in a service corridor beneath the state dining room. The readings suggested multiple individuals moving through areas that should have been empty during the dinner service. Emergency protocols activated immediately. Counter-assault teams moved through the palace corridors with practiced precision, their night vision equipment turning the familiar passages into tactical environments where any shadow could conceal a threat. They communicated through encrypted radio systems, while maintaining absolute silence to avoid alerting the guests above. The breakthrough came when protective officers discovered that the terrorists had accessed the palace through Victorian-era service tunnels that connected to the London underground system. The entrance had been hidden behind false walls that were virtually invisible unless someone knew exactly where to look. 3 armed individuals were detained in the tunnels before they could reach the dining room level. Their equipment included explosives, automatic weapons, and gas masks that would have protected them during a chemical attack on the state dinner guests. The timing of their capture prevented a catastrophe by mere minutes. Intelligence. Analysis of the captured terrorists revealed connections to international networks that had been planning similar attacks across Europe. The operation targeting the royal family was part of a coordinated campaign designed to undermine confidence in diplomatic cooperation and international stability. The Queen completed her toast without any indication that armed terrorists had been captured, just floors beneath where she stood. Her composure throughout the evening demonstrated the professionalism that protection officers relied upon during crisis situations. The diplomatic success of the dinner was achieved despite extraordinary security challenges. President Macron's security team later revealed that similar threats had been detected during his previous state visits, suggesting that the terrorist network had been studying high-profile diplomatic events for an extended period. The pattern indicated sophisticated planning capabilities and extensive resources. The investigation into how the terrorists accessed the tunnels revealed security vulnerabilities that had existed for decades. Historical records showed that the passages had been sealed during World War II, but apparently reopened through construction work that hadn't been properly coordinated with security services. Post-incident analysis showed that the terrorist cell had been monitoring palace security procedures for over 2 years. Their intelligence gathering had included infiltration attempts, surveillance of off-duty protection officers, and analysis of publicly available information about royal security arrangements. The arrest of additional cell members in coordinated raids across London provided intelligence about planned attacks against other European targets. The network's capabilities exceeded initial estimates, with connections to criminal organizations that could provide sophisticated weapons and technical support. Sarah's investigation revealed that the security breach had been more extensive than initially suspected. The terrorists had compromised computer systems, planted surveillance devices, and recruited inside sources who provided detailed information about royal family schedules and protection procedures. The palace security overhaul that followed would represent the most comprehensive review of royal protection in modern history. Every procedure would be examined, every system would be updated, and every staff member would undergo enhanced screening to prevent similar infiltrations. Protection officers involved in preventing the attack would receive recognition that remained classified, their heroism acknowledged only within the intelligence community that understood the full scope of what had been prevented. Their actions had preserved not just lives, but international relationships that could have been damaged by a successful attack. The psychological impact on royal family members varied, with some requesting increased security measures while others insisted on maintaining normal routines. The Queen's reaction emphasized continuing with royal duties, while acknowledging that protection requirements had fundamentally changed. Technology improvements accelerated following the incident, with new surveillance systems, communication equipment, and threat detection capabilities being implemented across all royal properties. The investment represented recognition that terrorist capabilities were evolving faster than traditional security measures. International cooperation in royal protection reached new levels of coordination, with intelligence sharing agreements that provided real-time threat assessments from multiple sources. The attack attempt had demonstrated that royal security was now an international concern requiring global cooperation. Training programs for protection officers expanded to include scenarios that had been considered unlikely before the tunnel infiltration. The curriculum now included underground warfare, chemical weapon response, and coordination with multiple international security agencies during crisis situations. The tunnel system was permanently sealed using methods that would prevent future unauthorized access while preserving the historical integrity of the palace structure. The engineering challenges required innovative solutions that balanced security requirements with conservation concerns. Media reports about the state dinner focused on its diplomatic success without mentioning the security operation that had ensured its completion. The decision to maintain operational security protected both investigative techniques and ongoing counterterrorism efforts against the remaining network members. Sarah's final report documented security improvements that would influence royal protection for decades. Her investigation had revealed vulnerabilities that extended beyond the immediate threat, leading to systematic changes in how royal security approached both traditional and emerging challenges. The terrorist network's ultimate defeat required continued international cooperation over many months. Cell members operating across Europe were gradually identified and arrested through intelligence sharing that had been enhanced by the lessons learned from the palace attack. Commander Harrison reflected that the incident had demonstrated both the vulnerabilities and strengths of royal protection systems. While terrorists had successfully infiltrated palace security, the response had prevented catastrophe and provided intelligence that enhanced security for future operations. The state dinner concluded with traditional ceremony, its diplomatic objectives achieved despite extraordinary security challenges. The evening represented both the successful preservation of international relationships and a reminder that royal security required constant evolution to address emerging threats from increasingly sophisticated adversaries.